Hello, my name is Parker,
And my name is Ned.
and this is the Force Unlimited, yet another Star Wars Unlimited podcast. This is episode number 19. We are recording July 19, and we're going to dive right in because we got a couple segments we want to cover today. Ned, tell us about the match that we just played, and be kind.
No, I will be more than kind. To revenge myself, Parker agreed to play Vader Green, and I'm playing a new variant of GI Yellow. And I did take it down in 3 games. I will say
I am
that
no Gandork.
you are. I would not put yourself down. I think that game 3 you were just absolutely robbed. So to go through the games in a little more detail, game 1 I did not respect the ramp enough where I ran out. Baze Nadell, I'm forgetting her name. The 1-3 that Bazine. Thank you, like benzene. All right, Bazine, who is an incredible.
That card makes me really angry because it's her subtitle. Her title is First Order Spy.
Yeah,
but she's not traded First Order, and
that is kind of wild.
I'm sure there's some canonical narrative reason why she works for the First Order, but is not of the First Order. But if you're going to highlight the First Order in her title, give her the trait.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't matter right now, but it's going to matter in the future, obviously.
Yes.
Every trait's going to matter. Anyway, first game, I did not respect the ramp, and so you were entering your 7-resource turn when I was on my 4-resource turn, and I was able to kind of delay the inevitable very briefly, but then the just haymaker after haymaker of like Vader unit, leader, Palp, just slamming me into the ground over and over.
Price on your head into ECL Super Laser Tech is just a delightful combo where it's just good luck on your turn 3, 4 resources. I'm going into 6.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Game 2, I was more defensive, and even then, it was a nail biter. It was real tight. But the 25 health base and me drawing Triple Dark Raid, hitting Ruthless Raider, enabled me to take it down. I would have lost in the next turn. Yeah, but Triple Dark Raid is a good card. Yeah.
Game 3, dear listener, I just staring down. I mulliganed into all of my end game, and I had nothing after nothing. It was just a brutal draw.
And I feel bad then for playing for board control and trying not to leave you with any units, because I think that if you had been able to overwhelming barrage that scanning officer, you might have been able to make something happen. I don't know, but
don't feel bad, Ned. You and I are going to be on late night gaming in October, and you're going to be playing against real players. And
yes, I will lose.
You need 3 months.
Yeah,
you need 3 months of training.
I'm getting all the reps that I can in. But yeah.
All right, let's go to segment 1.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about packs are out. I hope, dear listener, that your pulls are amazing. Mine are respectable, but less fun than I would like, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about mapping. Dear listener, if you're not familiar with mapping is the idea that...
Wait, Parker. Mapping?
Yes.
This is where we're considering a set, and we're trying to, for every element in set 1, find one and only one corresponding element in set 2. That kind of mapping?
I'm trying to twist it to be that kind of mapping, but no, it's not that kind of mapping. It is the kind of mapping, and this is not my jam. This isn't a thing that exists in LCGs, and that's part of the reason why I'm sharing the story as part of my discovering TCG experience. Mapping, as I understand it, and I have only recently become aware of this, is the fact that given enough nerds enough time on the internet, they will deconstruct and destroy a thing, much like Westworld. And so cards are made in a factory, which is an automated process. And Ned, as somebody who has cut their teeth, made their bones on Monte Carlo, you understand true randomness. In fact, a lot of randomness has to do with nuclear stuff. So, you're super into randomness.
Yes.
Tangent, do you know how CloudFront does its randomness? Have you ever heard the story?
Is it space noise? Because I know random.org uses space noise.
They use a wall of lava lamps. and they do
Oh,
hashes of an image of the lava lamps, because those
that's
are
good. That's
functionally
good.
random when you put 50
Yeah.
of them. Anyways, so random packs, but they're not really random because they're made in a factory that's making hundreds of thousands of units and blah 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 blah. But you want there to be the appearance of randomness, more randomness than is necessary for the average human being. But nerds being nerds, they are not the average human being, and money to be made. They will explore how these factories make these packs, make these boxes, and eventually try to figure out what the pattern is, because inevitably there will be some form of pattern, because there is not true randomness. And this is distinct from things like weighing for foil, which blows my
Hmm.
mind that you can do but that's not this story. This story is about mapping.
Yeah.
And in set one, my understanding was that there was some mapping of the legendaries. There was essentially a circle of legendaries, and if you found one or two in your box, you had a pretty high confidence of what the other legendaries were in your box. You were like, ooh, it's going to be either the one on the left or the one on the right, or whatever. And you were pretty
Right.
excited, but for the most part, the box felt relatively random. Shadows is not that. Shadows has been, as I understand it, completely mapped. If you look at the top two cards of a box, or top two packs of a box, and you open them and you look in your rare slot, you can basically know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what the rest of the box looks like, or at least what the rest of that column looks like. Now, there's end of shift. So it gets to the end of a
Right.
line, a new line starts, so it cuts, and you're like, oh, I got to the end, and now a totally different thing is starting. But there's a pattern, and you can identify the pattern. I want to talk about, quick tangent, a man by the name of Paul Gronke. He's a professor at my alma mater, actually, weirdly enough, on the cover of this month's alumni magazine. He is a political science professor, and thinking about this segment, Ned, it made me realize you should have gone into political science. It's all of the math, but all the game theory as
I
well.
actually considered doing political science, but
It's
at the
basically
time,
like board gamings, but with like real life elections.
no, no, no.
Um,
Yeah, happy to have that discussion with you. But
yeah.
yeah, that was an alternate life path that I considered.
So, so Gronke, I took a class with him. The first class he taught at our school, he had just come over from Michigan, Wisconsin, somewhere over there, and he was talking the Oregon lottery at the time, or the, I don't know how lotteries work, but a Pacific Northwest lottery or some lottery you can buy in Oregon
Yeah.
was up to like $250 million, and he asked if any student had bought a ticket, and the 22 of us being young liberal arts students, high on our own farts with no money to our name, we're like, obviously not. Lotteries and gambling are taxes on the stupid. And he then proceeds to pull out his lottery ticket, and his whole thing was rational decision making. And
Mm-hmm.
he said he didn't spend $10 on this ticket for a chance at winning the lottery, because that's ridiculous. Don't do that. That's dumb. He spent the $10 because when the money got that big, the fantasy for a week of making that fantasy from just pure fantasy to an actual possibility, no matter how remote.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a universe where he won, and so sitting in the car, stuck in rush hour traffic, fantasizing about being infinitely wealthy, as we all do. For him, for 1 week, for that $10, making it real, mattered, and that lecture lives. I just go back to that lecture all the time, because it's the value of fantasy, that fantasizing is a rational action made by rational actors. So I want to talk about the fact that, back to Star Wars Unlimited, in theory, I'm a target audience. I don't want to be so egotistical to say I'm the target audience, but I am an upper middle class nerd with discretionary income, who is getting back into TCGs after 20 plus years. So I have the spending ability of somebody of a software developer in my 40s, and I have the spending impulse control of an 8-year-old. Like, I'm going to Pac West purely to get a very expensive Asajj Ventress variant art, right? Like, that's why I'm going to Pac West, right? That's nuts. That's what I'm here for, right? And so I bought a little bit more SWU of Shadows than I did of Spark of Rebellion, and a little bit more than I should have. Ned, you and I have done a talk about Mr. Briefcase and
Yep.
what's the, I firmly believe that depending on how many pre-releases you do, there's a turning point where they're up to some inflection point. The marginal return on a box or on packs is good, right? Like if you're actually if your aim is to not build a deck but to establish
Have a collection.
wide
Yeah.
enough collection that you can build many
Right.
decks, a box, 2 boxes, maybe 3 depending on your release, makes sense. Beyond that point though, the marginal return drops off. You're chasing things or whatever. But for me, I've in Spark of Rebellion, I heard all these people talking about buying cases, multiple cases. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I know it doesn't make sense financially, but I'm going to participate in that fantasy. I want that fantasy of the cards. I want to crack those packs. This is the thing I want to do. Now, again, marginal return. So I knew, oddly enough, that I wasn't going to open a showcase because I ordered my majority of all my non-local boxes came from Deploy Your Leader, which is also the fine purveyor. Thank you, Brian, for shipping out during Barrel. He sold boxes to Golden Dice, who opened like 4 showcases, and also sold boxes to Jedi Geek Girl, who opened 2 showcases. So I was like, random is random, but if a number of showcases come off the same shelf as your box probably, your box already probably didn't, but it definitely probably doesn't. But there's this fantasy, there's this excitement. But so we don't normally do pack openings on this video, and we are not a science YouTube channel. But I want to open 3 packs because, in theory, opening a pack is fun. I watch Ice Cave Radio. They do emergency pack openings. You can vicariously get that little gambling high of, ooh, what's in the pack? What's going to be in the pack? But I feel like the math changes. We've got again, don't quote me. Believe me or don't. We're not doing weird audio tricks here. I've got a pack here. Could be anything, but I'm pretty sure it's Let the Wookiee Win. And
can you hold that up for the camera to demonstrate that it is, not...
Again, we're not doing science here. Like, people have done YouTube videos on this. If you don't believe me at this point, that's fine. But, so I've got this pack of cards. Turning around here. Going to go through. Anything good? Ooh, Hyperspace Take Captive. That's moderately interesting. Chrysanthemum. Hyperspace New Adventure. And there's the rare. Let the Wookiee Win. So... okay, right? Like, a little less fun when you know.
Yeah.
Same. Here's another pack. I'll open it right in front of the camera. Again, at this point, our listeners know, like, cannery is not our brand. We're not hype dudes.
What is the rare before you fan? What's the rare?
Right. The rare is Effant Mon. And you can tell, not a content creator, not my jam. There's Effant Mon.
Yep.
We'll do the third one perfectly, all right? Or as perfect as you and I do, Ned. This pack right here, sealed. Pretty confident. It's a Wild Rancor. Could be wrong.
Wild Rancor.
I'm pretty sure.
A fine card. I enjoy a Wild Rancor.
Oh, there's some cards.
Ray? Yeah.
Never leaving the camera, I hope. I think. And Wild Rancor is the rare.
There you go.
It's not fun. Like, I used to play LCGs, like, and back in the early days, old FFG made you buy starter decks thrice. You had to buy the starter box 3 times if you were playing competitively. And the first time you're opening the cards is exciting. Second, third time, not fun. And what that is right there, that's the removal of the dream, right? That makes you focus on, is $10 worth it for a chance at winning $250 million, which we all know it's not. Or is $10 worth, like, the fantasy? And perfectly mapped boxes remove that fantasy, and it sucks. That was, I can't put into words how crushingly disappointing that experience of opening those boxes was, because you open the top pack and it's Val, and I'm not gonna like keep the mystery. I'm a nerd.
Right.
I'm curious. Like it literally says curious down here in most episodes. I'm obviously gonna go find a list if there's a list, and seeing Val, I'm like, there's a German word for the combination of excitement knowing that I was about to get another Poe, the most expensive legendary in the set, and also the disappointment of being like, well, and now I've defined the next 11 packs I'm going to open. Like, and there's a weird chance of a foil being a legendary. There's a chance of a showcase, but not really, right? Why do I bring this up? I mean, partly just to share my personal experience. This is not a crazy new thing, although it sounds like it's pretty bad in Shadows compared to the way it is in other TCG packs. Eventually, nerds will crack the formula, but I mean, literally, I was on vacation while my boxes came in. I come back from vacation, and I am cracking them already knowing what is in basically every box. And it also really ruins the randomization, because you immediately, I mean, in theory, it's not evenly distributed. So once you start down a streak, you're getting all of that streak again.
Right. Which
means I have a surplus of Poes and crates. Boo-hoo, woe is me. But 0 Mandos, right? Like, zero Darksabers, 0 Rays, which is a statistical anomaly. I don't know, randomization.
Sure.
But one, I really hope FFG does better. Probably not for Twilight. Twilight probably is also going to suffer from this. It's not really Fantasy Flight's fault. How many places can you print cards in the United States? But still sucks, and I still hope they do better. Also, a bit of a just PSA. I know a lot of our dear listeners like listen to us and not. I mean, I feel like dear listeners either like terminally online listens to 50 podcasts and probably has 2 of their own, or it's just us. There is a local shop who I will not name, who I can't go to during Shadows for prize support, because I have 0 confidence that they will not open the top 2 packs, identify the legendary packs for single selling, and then immediately move them, and then take the other 20 packs and give them out as prize support. Like, you won in our constructed event. Here you go. Here's 3 packs that we've already pulled the legendaries from, and maybe you get a showcase. Maybe you get the extra foil legendary, but we've already locked down Poe. We've already locked down Crate. Sure, there's a finalizer. We'll leave it in because nobody wants it. But, So don't buy packs now of Shadows from sources you don't trust.
Yeah.
If you're really lucky, you have an idiot friend who is providing you with a playset of commons, uncommons, and a wide variety of about half the rares. An excess surplus of half the rares. Do that if you can. But I don't really have a point on that one, except for it sucked. And it was really disappointing. And for Twilight, I think I'm buying like a box, maybe 2, because it's just not, like, I don't have confidence that this will be solved by then. And so it's just going to be all singles, which is a path.
Soon your training will be complete.
But I want that joy. Like, I'm that idiot Timmy. Let me be the idiot Timmy. So now I got to go up to like Pac West and, I don't know, Essen or Spiel or wherever the,
if
German
you go to
is,
Spiel, I mean, let me know, dude.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think I am, but maybe next year I'll be chasing those variants all over the place. So, all right, let's talk about a real segment break, though. Speaking about things dying, like dreams.
Yes.
Let's talk about removal. I was fascinated, and Ned, I'm mostly going to let you talk in this segment, but I was fascinated by the speed in which, Sparker Rebellion, first set, kind of core set, has to lock down really basic ideas.
Yep.
Had a lot of removal, but okay, a game needs a certain amount of removal.
Yes.
And then Shadows came out with a lot more removal. We got Fell the Dragon, we got Rivals Fall, which are actual removal, but we also got like kind of circuitous removal and Mystic Reflection, things like Pike's Bane, Chewbacca, which
Daring Raid, Daring Raid. Do not forget Daring Raid.
Daring Raid. That's damage.
It's removal,
which is a form of removal. But I meant like, I know you've got a taxonomy of removal, but
I have a taxonomy.
It just surprised me how much more removal we had in Shadows, and so given that this is a game where you can directly attack your units, I was kind of caught off guard by how fast we got more removal, and I wanted to kind of, that felt off to me. That felt maybe too much of a reliance on the assumptions of other games. But I assume you're going to tell me that removal was healthy.
Removal
so
is
teach.
Extremely healthy. So I think that one of the other things about the volume of removal that's important is because Star Wars Unlimited is a limited first game or a limited primary game. It's one of the supported modes.
First class support.
First class support, yes. In order to have first class support for limited, you do need removal. You just absolutely positively need removal. And removal is, if you think about like the fundamental card effects, if I was going to design a game, not that I have done so in the past, but if I were to design a card game hypothetically, the kind of core elements of the game are the things that you use to do stuff with, which I'm going to call units in this kind of a game, and removal. Like, these are the two most fundamental elements. And for a lot of folks, particularly
add cards, remove cards, plus and minus.
Yeah, exactly, the plus and the minus. And for a lot of folks, particularly folks who are kind of newer to deck building or who are trying, I'm guilty of this also. I come up with a fun idea for the deck, and what you start off by doing is you start off by adding a whole bunch of units. And now you're up at 45 cards, and you say, okay, I have 5 more cards to include. Let's, I guess, sprinkle in some removal. And so, like, including removal in your deck can feel like eating your veggies. Like, everybody tells you, you should really pack some removal. Have you considered removing some of your underperforming units in favor of, like, removal?
Keeps you regular.
It keeps you regular. It's fiber. But I feel like you can make a very positive case for removal outside of just being the fun police. And more specifically, if we look at SWU, the way that removal is handled in SWU, because of the unique facets of SWU's system. So join me, won't you?
Yeah, no. So I see your bulleted list, a taxonomy of removal. So
yes.
I already called out, I think, let's go with our simplest form of removal, which is, surprisingly, everybody talked about Vanquish and Spark, but that is even qualified.
Yes.
And Rivals Fall comes out in Shadows, which is, that's about as simple as a card gets. Defeat a unit, period. 3 words, boom, done.
Yeah.
So that is the purest form of removal I think we have in the game.
Yes. So that
unqualified
kind of removal where it is just point and click, remove a unit, is typically called hard removal. So sometimes you have hard removal with constraints. So examples of hard removal with constraints are Takedown, Fell the Dragon. Vanquish is even kind of like hard removal with constraints, where it's a non-leader unit, and you can have these constraints operate in different ways. But fundamentally, the idea behind hard removal is if there is a unit and you need to get rid of it, you can point your hard removal at it and it will go away. There's also kind of pseudo hard removal. So this is like minus X effects, or just minus hit points effects. So make an opening, Mystic Reflection, Luke unit. These are
right, because those remove the Phantom, the lurker,
lurking TIE Phantom,
lurking Phantom, which can't be damaged.
Yes,
doesn't defeat the unit, because if it was a Tarkin deck that has a 10-9 Phantom, -2/-2 doesn't do it. But okay, pseudo hard removal. I'm with you.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, this is a loose typology, and I know that whenever we start talking about a topic, I always immediately jump into definitions like a huge grind. But I feel like it's important.
That's our brand, Ned. Don't apologize for it.
We got to talk about the space, because in addition to hard removal things that say like defeat a unit, there's also soft or temporary removal. So an example of soft or temporary removal are things like capture. Exhaust you can think of as a removal effect. Like, again, it's not quite as good as remove a unit, but No Good to Me Dead, I think, pulls a lot of weight in decks as a way to remove your opponent's units temporarily.
You can't spell temporary removal without tempo, Ned.
Exactly.
So okay, okay, yep.
Bounce
Temporary
is
soft
another
removal.
waylay, or evacuation are perfectly cromulent ways to remove units temporarily. And this is one of the ideas behind soft removal is you're taking something out of the picture for a little while. And frequently with soft removal, you're not completely removing a unit from the picture, but you are inhibiting the ability of the unit to do one of its primary functions. So an example of something that I also think of as frequently removal, but is not, is entrench, right? If you think of a unit's primary function as dealing damage to your opponent's base, if you entrench that unit and you are eliminating the ability for that unit to fulfill that particular function. You leave an enormous number of other functions in place. CF, overwhelming barrage, just
Well,
clearing
but I
your
mean,
board.
even
Yeah,
between like what is it, effective lackeys and
yeah,
the new guys who, when they die, you can just essentially return them as a resource so that you can
yeah. Those
smuggle them
guys.
out
Yeah,
again
yeah,
infinitely. Or palps return. Like even
yeah.
hard removal is temporary.
Yeah,
You know,
for
it's
again,
it's
for
a
a given
spectrum.
value of temporary, right? Yeah, it's
Right.
definitely a spectrum, and there's not yet been the like remove from the game, as we talked about many episodes ago. The kind of to use Magic terminology, like exile based removal. There hasn't
Right.
been a need for that yet, but probably we'll get there at some point. Like literally, no, just go away.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Burn or damage based removal is also removal. So open fire, daring raid, force choke. These
Overwhelming
are
barrage, strike true.
overwhelming barrage. Yeah, these are all other ways to remove units. And finally, you have what I think of as unit-based removal. And here you might immediately point to like Count Dooku or Pike's Bane Chewie, and those are kind of unit-based removal. But I'm thinking more here about ambush as a keyword and just attacking your units into the opponent's units. And
Solves the problem.
it solves the problem, right? Like the whole idea about why we're talking about this typology of removal and why all these things are classified under removal is that removal is there to solve your problems. Your problems are typically your opponent's units, and you need to have tools to be able to handle them, and removal is the way that you do it. So you might say, well, I don't, I'm cool, I'm hip, I know everything. Why do I need to include explicit removal tools when I can just play a bunch of units and then attack my units into my opponent's units, and that solves my problem? And I think that's good, right? Like units are your most efficient removal tools, because of the way that SWU's math works and because of alternating actions and just the fundamental combat model of SWU. Having units that can trade effectively into your opponent's units while staying on board is really good. And so, whether it comes from ambushing or whether it comes from just having like attacking your 2-3 into their 2-2, being able to have your units remove their units and leave your units on board is a really powerful effect and is something that you ought to do. But there are times that you don't want to do that. And specifically, if you think about you might need your units to do other things. The classic example of this is if you are the aggro deck in Who's the Beatdown. If you're the Beatdown, you want your units to be damaging your opponent's base, because every unit that you are spending on attacking your opponent's units is making the game take longer, and the longer that the game takes, the less advantage that you are when you are the Beatdown. And sometimes your units just don't trade well, right? Like if maybe they've got a sentinel unit in place, and so you have to remove the sentinel unit, but the sentinel unit might be big. You might have to trade away your whole board. You don't want to do that. There might be like just sizing considerations, right? Like if you've got a bunch of small minions, a bunch of small units, and your opponent has a single large unit, you might not want to trade your whole board away into your opponent's large unit, or you might not want to trade your good stuff away into your opponent's large unit. And sometimes there's just tempo questions about, not only in terms of like attacking your opponent, but if we imagine a situation where I'm the aggro deck and my opponent drops a medium-sized sentinel, I can trade my unit into their sentinel, but then I've spent one of my actions and I spent one of my units. And so I'm falling behind on my ability to deal damage. And so having a way to deal with my opponent's units out of my hand is really clutch. So You can and you should use, I guess, the kind of bottom line of this, and I'm going to try and pepper some practice points in here about things that you can apply to your own games of SWU, not just like kind of this very theoretical, high level discussion.
But so the answer to why not use your own units is because inevitably, in a matchup,
Yeah.
there is some trade
Yeah.
that is bad. Whether it's
Yes.
a bad number of units, it's a bad resource, it's a bad lane. There's just something that you need to trade that you can't or you don't want to.
Right.
And removal, by virtue of being more targetable,
Yes. It lets you
it
make
solves
the
the
trade
problem
better.
that your
It
units
solves your problem. Yeah.
solves your problem. Okay.
So
Practice points.
yes, practice points. So going into here, you can think of removal like a shield, right? Like you and or to use kind of a cruder analogy, it's kind of a gun, right? And like a gun, you have a limited number of bullets. So you want to make sure that you are using your bullets on the things that deserve to have bullets used on them. So do not, that you will inevitably encounter these situations where you are confronted with a problem. And that problem you have some removal in your hand, and your removal could deal with the problem. But you should ask yourself, before you use your removal, do I really need to use my removal on this unit? Or can I just suck it up and use my units or take some damage or whatever? So your threshold for how aggressive you need to be about employing your removal is going to vary on the deck that you're playing. So if you think about like a control deck is probably going to be a little more aggressive about deploying removal than an
Just
aggro
because
deck is.
all it's packing.
You got more bullets. Yeah, and your early game is defined by using your removal against their units, right? Whereas in an aggro deck, your early game is defined by getting your units onto the board to attack your opponent's face. But there are times when you're playing a control deck, if your opponent has like Piet out, right? Let's imagine that we're in some kind of a limited game, and I'm playing a control deck, and my opponent drops Piet on turn 2. And I've got a force choke in hand. Parker, in your qualified estimation, should I use my force choke on that Piet?
Oh, I love this. No, because Piet doesn't become relevant until you have 6 resources.
Right.
It's just a 1/4 for 5 turns or for 4 turns.
Right. And if you leave Piet there, the worst thing that Piet is going to do is inflict 4 points of damage on you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a problem you have to solve. There's a ticking clock, but you have oodles of time.
Right. So don't use your removal on the Piet. In contrast, if they've got a Sabine unit out there and you have removal, you probably want to choke it, right? Like, even though Sabine, in sort of like this cosmic scheme of things, or let's not talk about Sabine. Let's talk about like Viper Probe Droid, right? Like you can say, in the view of like an omnipotent game defining being, the Viper Probe Droid is probably a less powerful card during most of the game than Piet. But if you don't answer that Viper Probe Droid, you're going to be eating 12 points of damage. Whereas if you don't answer Piet, you're going to be taking 4.
Right.
And
No, agreed. Yeah. Also, I feel it's worth noting that the reason why we don't ascend to the truly highest levels of content creation is because we say we approach the meta from, if you were an omniscient game designing entity, right? Like yeah, if I'm in that situation, what's the line here? But no, I mean, continue. I absolutely love our conversations, and because I'm never going to be an omniscient game designing entity.
No, you're not.
But if I were, right?
Yeah. It would that you were. So this is kind of going to bring us into the second point about removal is when you are playing a mid-range deck against an aggro deck, you are going to see yourself in the control role as who's the beatdown. So you are going to be thinking of this as, I need to be using my removal against my opponent's units. And that's generally good and generally a good idea. But there is a problem, and that is you have only so many things that you can do on your turn, right? Like if you're spending your 3 resource turn playing Power of the Dark Side to eliminate one of your opponent's units, you are not playing your Boba Fett, right? If you are spending your 4 resource turn using Takedown, you are not playing Kanan Jarrus. And so when you can very easily get into this situation where you're in this kind of role assignment idea, you think, okay, I'm going to be the control in this situation, and so my goal is just to spend my turns removing my opponent's units. And I would invite you to consider an alternate universe where you let your opponent be able to do some stuff, and then you let yourself also be able to do some stuff, right? Like if you are a very controlling deck, then answering something all the way up the chain and spending most of the game in an empty board state is great for you. But the game is progressing, and so there is a world of difference, and this is a situation that I see frequently when I'm playing GI, is that I will drop my Scout Bike Pursuer on 1, I'll get it in for 3 damage. This is GI Blue. I'll get it in for 3 damage on my 2-resource turn, and then when I'm moving into my 3-resource turn, if I can remove their unit and keep my Scout Bike on the board, that is worlds better than a situation where we are left with an empty board. Because as long as my Scout Bike is on the board, I am advancing the game state. I am dealing up damage to my opponent, and for most decks, you are going to have a limited window in which to operate. You are not going to be able to be perfectly efficient all the way up and down the curve, and so being able to deploy your removal, this is something where SWU is very interesting with the alternating action mechanism, because if you can claim initiative, you can get your attack, you can do your open attack, you can get your attack in before they have a chance to use removal. And it's one of the reasons, as an aggro deck, you're frequently having to ask questions about trying to squeeze in a little bit more value on this turn versus a subsequent turn. Like, if you're Sabine and you're operating on your 2-resource turn, if your opponent, if you're in a situation where you can activate Sabine to deal a damage, versus you can move into the next turn with you having the initiative, you're going to deal more damage if you can hang on to the initiative if you feel like your opponent is on removal.
Right, or if your just opponent has the unit-based removal, if they're a control deck who can trade, like that one,
Yeah, to go back to the analogy about the shield, it is one thing if you're using your shield to kind of parry your opponent's sword swings. If you feel like they're going to tire out, that's good. But even better if you can just hit him in the face with the shield and then kind of sit on him, right? Like,
sure, yeah. Okay,
if you are using your removal and you're able to continue to advance your game state, and this is one of the reasons why being able to have a situation where you can remove something and play a threat, either because of your removal is cheap enough and it lines up well against your opponent. So imagine that you're like on your 3-resource turn, you use a Daring Raid to remove their unit, and then you play a 2-resource unit. That's a really good turn, right? Or unit-based removal. One of the reasons why Ambush is so powerful, one of the reasons why, Green Vader is so powerful, is they come in on 7, they ambush into one of your opponent's units and remove it, and then they leave behind a 5x body and another body. Right, so you've
removed and progressed. So that seems to be the
progressed.
mantra: is wherever possible, remove and progress.
Right.
I think that's why we're seeing the relentless rise. I think we'll see a rise of Relentless Raider in Shadows. I was playing it tonight, and don't discount the 8 free damage that it's guaranteed to do no matter what happens, assuming your opponent has units on the board, and if they don't, then they're losing. And then on top of that, it dodges both Fell the Dragon and Takedown. It has that like perfectly
and
sweet
force choke,
4/6,
right? Because it's a vehicle, right? You can't choke it. Yeah, no, it's It's a real good unit. Like 0 dark rating into that unit is it's a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, and then yeah, and then just triple dark rating, and then
Triple dark, sorry,
uh,
yeah. Yeah.
and then getting it back, do it again. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot of fun to be had there. So, do you have more practice points, Ned? Because I do have a follow up question for you.
I do have one more practice point, and that is around talking specifically about SWU. SWU, unlike a lot of, a lot is maybe stretching it, but unlike a number of other card games that I have played in the past, hard removal in SWU is very expensive. In Magic, kill a creature is, which is the equivalent of defeat a unit, is 2 or 3. Like it costs 2 or 3 for just remove a unit. Battlefields and Magic are very clear places, whereas in SWU, I think that the designers made an explicit choice, and I think it's a good choice to make hard removal really expensive. And so your ability to do the play a unit and do something else is going to be difficult unless you're dealing with your opponent's relatively small units or relatively damaged units.
But I think that's the value of persistent damage on the other
Yeah.
side, right? Like, is that daring raid, right? Like, 2 damage is nothing in Magic,
Yeah.
but often you can get pretty darn close this round, draw a daring raid next round. Yep, sure. Like, I'd rather just nuke a unit turn 1 or something, but late game,
Right.
yeah, I can get you within 2 and then just top it off. So
Yeah. And another part of this is that a lot of times in SWU, because of alternating actions, you end up with having windows where you can remove things. So a challenge that I've experienced a lot is playing against Yellow Boba. I have a very narrow window to deal damage to Yellow Boba before they put the armor on the stupid thing. And once the armor goes on, you're gonna have a bad time. So
removal solves that bad time.
removal solves that. Some removal solves that, and this is where you get into, sometimes you're going to end up with these narrow windows where you're able to use your removal effectively. Against Yellow Boba, let's imagine that like they play Yellow Boba and then I attack Seventh Sister into their base to deal 3 to Yellow Boba. That was a window in which I could get that damage through meaningfully, because as soon as the armor goes on, instead of dealing 3, I'm dealing 1, right? Another example of that is takedown or shield, right? Like a lot of times you will have a very narrow window to try and get your stuff through, before they put some protection. And so because of that, think carefully about, and I know this is not news to people, but think carefully before you take an action, because if you are under the assumption that, I need to get in my damage now and I'll just take down their unit later, you might find yourself badly surprised when they play a lightsaber on it, or when they even use like devotion or something to just get it out of danger range. So yeah.
All right, but so at the opening, at the top of the segment, Ned, you said
Yeah.
that removal is key, important, used to some powerful word there, for the limited. And obviously we
Yes.
see most of the removal in common or uncommon. Everything but Super Laser Blast and Avenger are in common or uncommon, I think. And those, why?
I mean, the
What makes the
fundamental
limited
answer,
special?
So in limited, you do not get to choose completely your pieces. The pieces that you have to play with are limited. And so as a result, there's frequently going to be a lot of situations where your opponent will be able to establish a board presence, they'll be able to put down units, and you won't immediately have the answers to them, either because your curve's not great or because just from mechanically unit comparisons, I'm thinking here, if you look at like common units, right? Like if I'm in aggression, if we look at common aggression units in Spark, you tend not to have more than like 3, maybe 4 hit points, right? And so you can end up in situations where you're not able to trade efficiently. And if you do not have removal, the game very quickly turns into who's got the beefier beefer or
Right.
who can run faster, right? Like it splays towards the edges of you're playing aggressive decks that are trying to get under your opponent before they can play their beef, or you're playing again limited control decks are kind of weird, but like a classic limited control deck is one in which you have big
You
units
opened or
at the top
drafted
end.
a legendary, so
Right.
congratulations, you got Vader. You're just dragging the game out, so you get to play your Vader
Right. Or
and
you got Luke, right? Like as soon as
right,
Luke removes a unit and is hitting for a lot and restoring 3, right? Like Luke is solving an enormous number of your problems. In Shadows, like let's pretend you get Crate Dragon, right? Like as soon as Crate Dragon hits the board, uh, outside of a number of circumstances, your opponent is just host. And so you
yep.
need to be able to give catch up mechanisms. And so
So it's
removal
less
is,
that I mean, I was about to
yeah,
say control versus aggro is the
it's
natural
classic, right?
spectrum, but
But
it's the fact that
if you
you got to be able
mid
to come
range
back.
needs to mid range needs to exist, and in order for mid range to exist, you need to have catch up mechanisms, because
Okay.
otherwise, if you fall behind, you cannot come back efficiently. Um, you know, to go back to that idea of using your shield to sit on your opponent. If I play something on 2 and you miss your 2, and then every other play we're just trading our units of that cost away, I'm still able to get an attack in with my unit that I played on my 2 resource turn, I will win, right?
Right,
And
right.
removal being able to handle that efficiently enables you to come back from a bad start, or enables you to deal with your opponent's powerful cards.
Okay. All right. That is a compelling case for removal, but I want to go on to our next segment. Are you ready to go on to our next segment then?
I am pumped to go on to our next segment.
All right, dear listener, for our next segment, thank you for sticking with us through the sad stuff. Thank you for sticking with us through the dry stuff. Now we have the good stuff. If you listen to other content creators, other podcasts, and you should, you will hear about good decks. We have mostly talked about Grand Inquisitors, so we don't know anything about good decks. But what we do know, what we can talk about is the most popular decks. So we want to talk about what the the top 10 leaders, not decks, leaders, were from the first week of Shadows. We think this is kind of interesting. I shared some of this information at the end of when Spark of Rebellion launched. People have been talking and talking, but what are people actually building? This is based on July 12th through July 19th, 7 days exactly, 7 times 24. Accommodating, accounting for the additional week for pre-release does not change this top 10 fundamentally. So these are the 10 leaders that out of the 36 that we now have that people are excited to build. There were 41,000 decks created in that week, and 22,000 of them are in the top 10. Coming in number 10, Yellow Han, Classic Han, Han 1, using the new nomenclature from Garbage Rollers, Han 1. Number 9, Gar Saxon, new leader. Number 8, again, a returning face, Tarkin.
Tarkin
Number
above Han.
Tarkin above Han. Tarkin is making a
Yeah.
comeback, and I have thoughts on that. Number 7, Sabine. Still good. Darksaber's good.
Darksaber.
Number
Yeah.
6, Cad Bane. For those not aware, Cad Bane is the common cunning villain leader who, when you play an underworld unit, forces your opponent to choose one of their units to do 1 damage to. He deploys as a 2/8 with raid 2 and bumps that chip damage up. He's a bounty hunter. Number 5 is the number 5 most popular created deck on swudb is Kylo Ren,
Kylo
bringing
Ren.
in
Okay.
9% of the top 10.
People are hungry for villain aggro.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
also people are hungry for Adam. I mean, like I don't know,
sure.
like
Adam Driver.
let's be
Yeah,
honest,
no, yeah.
he's a beefy
I
guy.
will say that Jason Mendoza on The Acolyte is,
Woo!
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Sorry,
Darth
what's that
Darth
actor's name?
Plagueis
Yeah.
Jason Mendoza. Yeah, no, but
No,
Darth
yeah,
Plagueis
no,
is
yeah.
handsomer, beefier apprentice. So yeah, Kylo at number 5, Jabba at number 4, also with 9%.
That's
Number,
interesting. I
yeah,
mean, I'm
it's
kind of curious about Jabba. Like when I was looking at the leaders, I had to say I was expecting Jabba to be not as up there because it felt like it was kind of unfocused and weird. But people are definitely really liking it. Sorry, you have thoughts?
I do. So in our last episode where we got married, Ned,
Yes.
I think the reason I like Jabba is the reason a lot of people like Jabba. I think a lot of people find green control appealing and
Mm.
don't want to play Pal. Like if you don't want to
But Pal,
sacrifice your own unit, right? Like killing your own unit isn't
but
fun.
that's the juice. That's the juice. You get to kill your own units and draw cards.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand intellectually, but I think there's clearly with Jabba at number 4, there's a non-trivial number of people who find sacking your own units towards victory unappealing. You want to play with your units. You just got these toys. So I think he has this promise of ramp. He has free bounties. I think people are trying to make him work. We'll
Yeah.
see. Number 3, Han 2, young Han, red Han.
I really like. I'm not surprised by this. This is a card that has like so many different things going for it. Like
Oh man,
it
yeah, you can
enables
do it aggro. You
so
can do it not quite
like
control,
sort of
but he's his own
like
ramp.
like yeah like a ramp style deck. You can do it to enable self damage. Turn on Carabas. It's not. He's not a bad unit on his own. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
I mean he's not good. 3-6 at
Sure,
5
but he's
is
not bad. He's better than Lando.
yeah. No. I mean yes, that's most are better than Lando. No, I've played now a number of games with Han 2.
Yeah.
I don't want him in aggro because I feel like that's just the line is too tight.
Yes.
The line is too close. But playing Poe on turn 3 feels good. Getting
Yeah.
crate out earlier, right? Like just getting all those things out earlier. The one I've been really big on is Yoda in Blue Han because a 2/2 with Restore 2 who draws his own card, who has the Force keyword as your opening card is
That's not
not
bad.
bad. Like,
Not bad, yeah.
like
And you can slap a lightsaber on him, right?
yeah, exactly. Yoda is fine. Yoda's, I think, mid. He just happens to be the best of the 3 and under cost Force users, of which there are, 2? 3 with Ezra. But
Yeah.
in blue, it's just him and the Guardian of the Wills.
Yeah.
I think Yoda gets bumped pretty aggressively once, Twilight with all the more Force users comes out. But in Han, for 2, that exchange I feel like just makes Han or Yoda fantastic because especially you're playing in a Sabine or something, they gotta go for him immediately, which draws you a card. If they don't go for him, they're going for face. You've got that restore. And again, yeah, the great lightsabers cost 3. You're off to the races.
Also a vindication of Ned math because they're implicitly valuing 1 cost at 2 hit points.
Yes, yes, very much so, right? But not 1/1, right? Like that was actually,
No,
So,
Tyler Parrott. I think was it Xander or Tyler Parrott talking
no,
about
it
it
was
on
Tyler
Twitter?
who tweeted.
It was Taylor. Yeah.
No. No. Total Ned math. Again, you're not describing the universe as people think it is. You're describing it as it is. So,
Yes.
purely descriptive. Number 2, the second most popular leader, by number of decks created. 2,900 plus decks, bringing in 13% of the top 10 decks is Rey, which does not surprise me.
Really? Okay, I'm surprised, but like I looked at that card and nothing about that card spoke to me. But I'm also like a monster, so
Rey is one of the 2 decks that I'm currently maining. Rey Blue slaps Rey Red is probably I think the better deck. You can drop so many big butts, and unlike Villainy, which wants to trade those big butts for more damage in this weird control game, uh, Ray can turn those big butts into time. It's just pure value. When you've got a 3/6 R2 on turn 2, like, you just drag the game out, and you just you can trade that R2 into like 3 aggro units, and then there's just, I mean, she comes with 3 restore. You've got restore for days in blue heroism. There's so much restore. One of the most fun games I played was a showdown where I was Krennic and I healed for 29 against a Sabine, or sorry, a Leia red player. I think I watched somebody break. I'm excited to have that be my every game. Like, why not? Like, Ray just restores. I mean, she restores 3. That's a guaranteed. You thought Krennic was bad. She's worse. There's just so many big butts and shadows. Like, and if you take her with the pure blue, she has vigilance for 4, which is, again, it just drags the game out. But I think in red you get a lot of the force package, that force throw. There's all kinds of games you can play. I think she's the most obvious nut to crack, right? Like, in that, speaking just to the meta, I don't think anybody's stepped up in aggro. I think Kira's stepping up in villainy, but that's not because she's busted. It's just because Krennic and Iden.
Yeah, it's the same package, but it's the same package, but with a more aggressive removal engine / more aggressive leader stapled to it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, we can go with that. But which maybe hints at my comment about maybe things not changing. The number 1 with a bullet, most popular leader created on swudb in the first week, Yellow Boba. Boba won. We're going to have more. Insert photo of me at Tussauds next to the wax statue of Boba Fett. It's going to. We got 4 more months of this, Ned. Groundhog has seen its shadow. It's gonna. I don't know if he's good, but everybody still wants to build him, right? Like,
well, so like the deck didn't even get, like, it got some stuff, but Boba Fett's armor on its own is just so good, and the fact that it costs 2 and it plays into the Boba turn, like the number of games that I have, before Shadows, I felt like I had a pretty good GI Blue matchup into Boba, most Boba variants. Boba Blue wasn't too sure about, but and
that's
armor
actually
just completely destroys.
Yeah, no, the armor's. Yeah. I mean, so you just got to have some bounce, or upgrade removal. But that's why a list is 60 cards, Ned.
Yeah.
But I suspect, and this is not based on data. This is based on my hunch. I suspect part of the popularity of Boba is that, I mean, he's busted good, as noted. But we now have tools. Sparker Rebellion did not have the tools to build Blue Boba. It got there in the end, but it wasn't obvious, and it took a very high skill. And Boba Red was borderline non-existent. I think I'm allowed to say that. And I think now you can just run Boba like with anything. And so whatever villainy color you open the most of, people invested in Boba, in Spark, and whatever villainy color you invested in the most of, pair him up. He goes great with everything, right? Like he is.
He's the Frank's Red Hot of.
Yeah, but I think he might be. I've made a personal brand of trying to call out firsts. I think he might be our first Star Wars Unlimited leader who is viable in all 4 colors. Like
I've seen. I'm thinking here, like I've seen Sabine in everything but blue, right? Like
everything. Yeah. But we've had a couple leaders who get to 3, right?
Yeah.
But I think Boba will be our first leader you have meta viable or had meta viable. The meta shifts, but
Sure.
we'll be able to point to some spike in a meta map and say that's when Boba was partnered with this color, and he'll hit all 4 colors. I think he's our first on that front. But 3,000 of the almost 10% of the all new decks created on swudb in the first week were Boba Yellow, were Boba 1.
Oh boy.
But you were surprised. Let me give you a note of optimism, Ned.
Yes.
New topography.
Yes.
You said you were surprised by Tarkin, and I think Hera didn't get any love. I don't think Leia really got enough love.
No.
But it turns out that Lurking TIE Phantom is all the love Tarkin needed. It's an Imperial unit that just is immune to most control. And unlike anybody else, Tarkin can just buff it for days. If he gets it out and you don't immediately have an answer, 5/4 Lurking TIE Phantom is not crazy. And good luck answering that with units, right? Like, he just builds it up. And if you're throwing everything at it, well, then he wins by just beefing everything else up. So I think Tarkin is seeing a resurgence because I think there's Lurking TIE Phantom's enough to push him, and now you've got a space Imperial package, and I think that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, I think that is really interesting. This would, if you had asked me before the set, and I think that before Twilight comes out, we ought to go through and make a guess at what we think the top 10 will be of the new set.
Yeah, that is staring into the abyss, Ned. That is us watching too much content and then coming back. Predictions, man, that's getting really dangerously close to like predicting which cards are good and then talking about which cards are good.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. No.
I'm not saying I'm opposed. I'm just saying predicting which cards are going to be good is that's
a mugs game. Yeah, that's not our brand. Yeah,
we need to get YouTuber logos and stuff, and we'll have a little AI clip all of our ums and ahs, and we'll have blue lights on IKEA bookshelves behind us.
Matching shirts.
Well, we're gonna do that anyway. I mean,
all right,
gotta roll in a Pac West with style. So there you have it. We've got a couple returning leaders. Returning leaders making the top 10. Not a huge surprise. It's Han, Tarkin, Sabine, and Boba once. And you'll notice none of the control package made it back into the top 10. And in fact,
building control.
I that might speak just to the nature that metas start aggro and get controllier as people figure it out. That there is no control in the top 10. So if you are a player of the game, go find somebody else to tell you what to build. But if you are a content creator, there's your list of the 10 leaders other people would like to hear you talk about how to make good. We do not have that answer. We're going to go back to playing GI and Timmy decks. I want to give one final shout out to the person or people who made the sum total of 58 decks starring Jyn Erso, resisting oppression. 58 Jyn Erso decks in the first week compared to over 3,000 Boba decks. Thank you for keeping the dream alive. I was not there to help you, but Jin's never going to be good, but she's a good dream. It's
no. I feel there will come a time. I don't know what that time will be. I don't know why.
It's when her title changes because she's a different leader. That's when Jyn Erso will be good. So.
On paper, giving defending units -1 power doesn't seem too bad. I don't know, man.
And yet it is, Ned.
Yet it is.
And yet it is. All right, and that's all she wrote, dear listener. This was episode number 19 of The Force Unlimited. We're recording on July 19th. If you have any thoughts about the episode, please email us at theforceunlimited@gmail.com. Seriously, ask us weird questions. Either Ned or I know the answer, or we will make it up for 70 minutes. Ned, do you have any final thoughts?
Parker, what do you think of my new hat?
Is it a man with a beard?
It's a dwarf. It's a dwarf fortress hat.
A Dwarf Fortress hat. Well,
Yeah,
it's not ASCII, Ned, so it's, I mean,
it is.
poser.
This is the ASCII dwarf in Dwarf Fortress.
This is a rough note to go out on. Dear listener, we will see you in a few weeks.